in my pocket. What's going on, guys? Sensible Prepper Live. We're here with Robbie Wheaton from Wheaton Arms.
Great to be here.
And Robbie's been a gunsmith for over 20 years. He was a Marine and a gardener extraordinaire and really just a good friend. And he owns WheatonArms.com. And also he has the Robbie Wheaton YouTube channel. And what are you doing tonight?
Yeah, make sure you check it out. Tonight, we're going to be talking about truck guns and what's the best gun that you can have in your vehicle. So show starts at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Robbie Wheaton YouTube channel. Make sure you go to the live section. That's where the video will be. And I think, is there a link down below in the description? No link down below in the description, but just go to the Robbie Wheaton YouTube channel. You'll be able to find it.
Yeah, Robbie sent me a link. I told him I'd put it in, and I did.
There is.
No, there's a link of Robbie Wheaton's channel, and there's a link. You can go straight to the to his channel with the link down below in the description. Also, we have a big thank you to Sarah Mack for helping get things set up. She will be answering questions or sending us questions, so you can leave those questions at any time, and then we'll take a break, and you can check it out, or she'll check it out, and we'll try our best to answer. So, welcome, and also we want to thank Exotac. They give a 20% discount using Sootch 20. They make the best fire starters on the market, hands down, made down in Winder, Georgia. Very innovative, just excellent fire tools. And guys, you need a fire kit. Fire is essential. It's elemental, and it cooks our food. It boils our water, gives us light, gives us heat, and it keeps predators at bay. So check out Exotac. All right, today we're going to talk about something, and we've talked about some of these things in the past, and it's a theme. It's a theme within the prepping community, the preparedness community. But there are three events that have happened. One of them is not necessarily. One of them's happened a little while ago, but these are three events that led to the title, which is World War III, Civil War, and the economy. And so we're gonna kind of look at some things. One of the things we like to do, though, is we want to talk about stuff and keep you guys in the know. We want to stay involved and informed, but we also like to give you solutions and things to consider, things to not just to dwell on what's happening, because things are going to happen. Just like last week, things happened suddenly. Where, of course, obviously with the Iran-Israel situation, that was just all of a sudden, it's like on the news, we'd been hearing possibilities of Iran, but they do a lot of saber rattling. And all of a sudden, here they come. And so, and that really kind of put everybody on edge for a little while. And thank God that it was thwarted pretty much. I mean, the attack was very minimal and a kind of an embarrassment, honestly, to Iran and its proxies, but still it was something major. What we're looking at now is for Israel to retaliate,
right?
Which the response. So we're going to see how things go, but it could be a very dire situation. So with that being said, also, I don't know if you guys watched the price of gold last week. I've been talking about this for a little while, but gold went to 2,400, and I believe it was $48. That is the highest. It's been the highest in history. It keeps $600 an ounce. What does that mean? Well, it means I'm not going to be buying gold. Well, it means that your dollar is just worth less. And that is one of the big things about the price of. I'm doing a video, actually, it should be up in the next day or two, about buying gold, how I do it. And silver's right there with it. Silver reached right at $30 an ounce. That's high. And silver may be a better option, honestly. But that is a big thing. And you're not seeing it in the news unless you're seeing it in financial news.
Yep.
And then the one that really brought in the Civil War is the new movie that's come out, which I haven't seen it yet. I watched the trailers, and and I've heard some mixed reviews about some of the ideology behind it. But I think it's I've heard a lot of people just talking about what it's just a must see because it just lets you see some things that are going on and how easily something could happen. So the Civil War movie, it's raging right now. A lot of people are going to watch it. It does affect our psyche as a nation, those kind of things, I think. And there have been a number of these type movies that have come out over the past year. And so, of course, with Hollywood's fingerprint on it, it kind of does what it does. But if they're talking about it, there's definitely something to consider. So let's talk about a few things first. We're going to start out with a possible world war. What kind of threats are we seeing? Why should you be even bothered? But let me say this right up front. The main purpose for this is not, we can look on the news and we can see these events. The main purpose for what we're talking about today is that what should you do to be prepared? And guys, most of us on here are preppers. We're concerned about things, but there are times where things start to happen where you need to ratchet things up. And that's really my big takeaway here. All right. So first thing we're going to do is world events, World War III. What are some threats around World War III? What are some issues that we're looking at that are possibilities? Previously this past year, we've looked at Taiwan and Ukraine and, with Russia.
There's something wrong with the audio. I'm getting some messages from people that we don't have any audio, that they can't hear us.
Are you seeing it in the comments?
Well, I'm watching it here, and it's weird because part of it is like it would kind of do.
Check the connections.
And then it started. It's actually like good right now.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out.
Keep us informed, guys. If there's some issues, Sarah Mack is monitoring the questions and the comments. And if there's some issues,
Pull it up to you.
there may be a connection.
There's a little bit of lagging in the actual.
Yeah, last night we had Patreon Live, so we had everything set up, and we may be having some. There may have been something that got knocked as well.
I think it might not necessarily be the audio. It might be
the internet.
Just the internet might be a little. So it's.
Well, keep us informed, guys, in the comments. If there is some audio problems, just let us know, and we'll see. Okay.
Right now, it seems to be good.
All right. And if I'm too loud, also just throw it in there, because sometimes when this mic gets up and I have a loud voice, and so I have to tone it down a bit. Okay. So we're talking about World War III, world events again, Ukraine, Taiwan, those kind of situations. That's been kind of ongoing. There have been some threats from China around the sea.
Sorry.
I'm listening to it.
Okay.
Okay. Or is it clear? Does it seem to be okay?
It's hard to listen to y'all talk and listen to y'all talk at the same time.
Well, there's nothing worse than listening to something, especially when the audio is lagging.
Mm.
It is very distracting.
Yep.
So we don't want to get things rolling, and then you guys are having to listen to a lag. But we're working on it right now behind the scenes. Okay, so what we've seen is we've seen Ukraine, the escalations there. She's gotten worse. Of course, there's a lot of threats with the Soviet Union toward European countries. We've seen a lot of European countries that are bolstering their military. A lot of, Sweden came out about a year ago and stated that, they need to prepare for war, got their citizens on board to start preparing, start to upping the game. So, there's been a lot of threats before, and that's really been toward Europe. And of course, terror attacks here in the U.S. And that can also lead to a lot of conflict on foreign soil.
Well, one of the big things with terror attacks in the United States, that's a huge concern for all of us right now, are our open borders and the people that are allowed to flood across our borders, fighting age men that are allowed to flood across our borders and just go anywhere they want to within the country. And what's their end goal? What's their intention being here? Are they just coming for a better life, or are they coming to destroy this country?
I want to give you guys just something to throw out there is, please contact your congressman, contact your senators. I don't care if they're super liberal, because really even some of them that are pretty leftist, still don't want the open borders. And we're seeing what's going on in Chicago and LA's disaster, and then New York City. We're seeing that on the news. So there's a lot of pushback against a lot of this stuff, and we need to really get tough and voice our opinion. A lot of times we count on others to do it, but we really need, this is a very important thing. This is going to probably be the biggest threat to our country right now, is just the open borders. Because there are a lot, they've captured a number of terrorists that have crossed the border. And so we really need to be on guard, but we need to stop. We need to stop the flow. And these states that are fighting to stop it, we need to stop them being stopped by our own federal government. It's absolutely crazy. But as far as World War, what that does is if they get across and they have some kind of attack, and let's say it's from Iran, we saw what happened in Iraq after 9/11. We saw what's happened in Afghanistan. So a concerted terror attack could really cause the U.S. to go back overseas with boots on the ground. And that could definitely start an escalation, especially with the other things that are going on in the world right now. So a lot of issues. How's the audio?
We're just having, the sound is like, it'll be good, and then there'll be a little bit of and then it'll just kind of, just periodically. It's not like completely having problems, but it is kind of.
Okay. Well, we're gonna continue on, and then if not, we may have to. If it starts getting too distracting, we'll do something different. Now, one big major thing that's going on right now are cyber attacks against the U.S. And this really causes a lot of issues. There was a county sheriff that was talking about this, where they have like 10 cyber attacks in a small county a week, just continually cyber attacks. And some of them are successful. And so, there is a concerted effort by other nations. China is a big one, North Korea, Iran, Russia. They're really making these concerted efforts to be able, to attack our infrastructure is what they're trying to do. Whether it's 911 dispatch, whether it's your water systems, gasoline systems. I mean, there's a lot of different things that are being attacked. And so if we have something that's pretty major, it could lead to other attacks, and which would lead possibly to confrontations. So, World War, definitely, one of those things that there's a lot of possibilities right now, and we need to be ready. Another thing too is, guys, being involved with your political parties, being involved with your representatives, because a lot of times, they're being contacted by people. We need to make sure we have our voice. The one thing that personally I don't want is for us to go into a shooting war in Iran and then send a bunch of our boys over there. That's just a huge loss of life, or some other, like even Ukraine. I mean, sending our guys over there to fight a war that we really have no business being in the middle of. Yes, we can support Ukraine, which we should, but that's one thing that we need to be careful of, because for me, it's not that important for me to lose my sons over. And that's one thing, there are people out there whose sons are serving in the military. And is it worth them losing their life for some kind of political gain? Okay. I know we're a little distracted because of the audio, but I hope it's not messing you guys up. So obviously there's some issues. Now, let me throw something in here. This really doesn't have anything to do with World War, but it does have to do with our food production. There is an attack on food production worldwide, whether it's the Dutch farmers, which kind of started it off, or the French or the Germans, and even the Irish, and we'd mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, that the Irish farmers were ordered to slaughter 200,000 heads of cattle for green energy, for the green initiatives. And so these green initiatives are being supported by a lot of money into these governments to curtail their food production. Guys, we're already seeing food prices go up 40% just because of inflation and things that are happening here in the U.S. But we have got to really step it up. And so, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more during the economy section of it. But I really think, like for us, we're really in the midst of gardening right now, making our own food. Are we going to be able to produce all the food we need? Well, you can be very creative. But you really need to start now thinking about food production. You may not have ever had a garden, but guys, there's so much information out there. And really plants just grow. Now, once they grow is when you got to start, tending to the garden. You got to watch for pests. You got to watch for, blight and different things that happen, and are the conditions right. But years ago, when I first started gardening, I used to help my grandparents in their garden a lot, and my parents garden too some, but I didn't really help a lot with them. But honestly, I just kind of got a tiller and went out and tilled some ground and started planting plants, and really didn't know what I was doing, and had huge gardens.
But the thing is, once you really start to learn how to garden and how to garden properly, you can have a ton of food production in a very small area. You don't have to have 2 or 3 acres planted to be able to provide a lot of food for you. You can grow a lot of food in a very, very small area. You just have to be creative with how you set your soil up, how you set your ground up, how you grow your plants. A lot of stuff grows really well vertically, or hanging, or growing vertically.
Right.
We're doing all of our squash and all of our cucumbers on runners this year to get it up off of the ground. And it helps cut down on pests with them, but it also makes it easier to fertilize. It makes it easier to water. It makes it easier to harvest with it being up off the ground. So we're doing a lot of different stuff with our garden this year that we haven't done in the past to try and bolster production.
So it's one of those things where it gives you number one, it's just healthy. It's very healthy. Number two, it cuts down on your grocery bill. So, yes, you have to put some labor into it, but it's just fresh. I'm going to tell you, there is nothing better than walking out into the garden and picking leaves, getting your leaf lettuce and picking it off, grabbing a couple of radishes, grabbing an onion, a tomato, go inside and fix a salad right within minutes of getting it off the vine. It's just it's incredible. And two, it's a huge sense of accomplishment. Even if you live in an apartment or a condominium, grow some tomato plants out on your deck if you can. Grow some different vegetables. There are some things you can do like that.
Yep.
Even have an herb garden, which, herbs are definitely not something that's going to sustain you in a sense, but it sure is going to make the food taste better.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But there is, according to world officials, there is a beef shortage that's coming. Now, usually when beef shortages come, it doesn't really affect us, the availability to get beef. It just brings the price up. But it does affect the ability for third world countries to be able to to get beef and to afford it. And so hurting the most. So, we want to, what is it? Is the audio still doing?
It's still doing, like, periodically and it just kind of pauses. And
sorry guys, I don't know what it is. We'll have to check it out. But so just food production, which is not really part of World War III, but it is. Because if we start to have issues and there's trade problems or transportation problems because of a world war, and we did a video, it's been about a month ago now, it was the 4 choke points. And those points in a wartime situation can be cut off. And that will really limit us from a lot of the supplies and the dependency that the U.S. has on other countries.
Okay. We just saw one a couple of weeks ago with that port being blocked in Maryland.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we saw the Strait of Hormuz, which was one of the choke points that I talked about. 40% of oil production goes through that area. If Iran closes that off, which it's right there, I mean, they have a perfect place to be able to shut that down. That could really affect our prices at the pump. And in fact, they're already saying that if a war happens between Israel and Iran, that the price of oil is going to go up 4 times. The price of a barrel of oil will go up quadruple in price.
Yep.
So, we're already paying high prices at the pump already. And so now we're going to be paying even more. I think that is another point that we can make, to call your congressman and say, we've got to have energy independence here in the U.S. and all this other bull crap's got to go. These agendas and shutting down pipelines and shutting down drilling leases and stopping natural gas and fracking and all these different things that support our country and deliver food to the doors and actually lower prices. It's being stopped for some insane agenda. And, again, it just needs to be stopped. And the one way to do it is to get in touch with your congressman and put heat to them. Okay, so World War III, and there's a lot of people that are talking about it. What can you do about World War III? Well, there's nothing you can really do about it. If it happens, though, you can be in better situations. And this is going to be the theme through all this. Get yourself in a good situation. Get as independent and self-reliant as you can. And that's probably one of the biggest things. I'm going down to an event this coming week, Georgia Bushcraft, and it's a big bushcraft event. And my good friend Casey and his wife Jessica, they've been putting this on for a number of years. First year I'm going down, but it's just being more independent, more self-sufficient, learning how to use nature for your benefit, and it's just learning these skills and just getting yourself in good shape. Okay, Civil War. Let's talk about Civil War. What is there's been a lot of speculation from the right and the left, and we've seen some horrific protest and some violence, a lot of violence at certain times. So really, I'm going to just be honest with the coming election. We have got to be prepared. And when I say prepared, I mean, you need to be prepared to, if you're in a city, I would consider maybe taking a week off around election time, getting ourselves in good shape. And, but there's just a very strong divide in this country between progressives and conservatives. Conservative values, the Constitution, how we feel like that what's made this country great. And then you have this leftist progressive ideology that doesn't care about facts. They're more interested in the outcome, the agenda. And it's very emotional thinking. With that, though, it's very volatile. And so, this whole thing, and we've been watching this now. We've all been watching this for a while. And we're seeing the divide get just stronger and stronger. Where it's going to lead. And then movies like The Civil War come out, or Those Who Are Left Behind, or whatever that movie that Obama was a part of. But there's a lot of stuff coming out of Hollywood right now. Robbie's quiet today. Okay. Constitution, there's just a lot of attacks on our freedoms. There's attacks on freedom of speech. There's definitely a lot of attacks on the Second Amendment.
No, you're exactly right. We're seeing tremendous attacks on our personal individual freedoms, and I go back to the progressive and conservative split that we're seeing within our country right now. I don't think since the Civil War in the 1860s that we have seen a country that is so divided on their ideological viewpoints, and that was one of the catalysts for the first Civil War that we had. Was the country was divided, and it wasn't just divided over slavery. That was one of the points. It was really divided over taxation on exported goods, was one of the big reasons that we ended up with the Civil War. But we are so divided today, and it's really interesting to watch and see how the mainstream media portrays progressives and how they portray conservatives. And it's like they're feeding that divide and making that divide even wider. You look at social media, if you're conservative, you never see anything on your social media about anything progressive. All you see is stuff about conservatives. Progressives are the same way. All they see is stuff about progressive government, progressive everything. And that continues to split people further and further apart instead of having ideas that they can share with one another. It just creates a wider divide. I think social media right now is probably one of the biggest problems that we have within our country that is dividing us even further.
Yeah, I think it's actually promoted a lot of, one thing that Charlie Kirk says that I really like is he says, I'm here to talk. I'm here to discuss. I'm here to debate. And people are like, why are you here? What are you doing? And he said, if we stop talking, we start fighting.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, it's one or the other. Because if you'll notice, especially when you get into a protest situation, there's no reasoning either side.
Yep.
They are dead set in what they believe. And they start to look at the other side as the enemy. And that's really a problem.
Listen, what's one of the quickest ways to ruin a marriage? I mean, just the quickest, easiest way to ruin a marriage is stop communication with each other.
Yeah.
Communication stops with each other. There's a divide that happens. You start to hate that person for no reason, really. And the next thing you know, you're separated and you're divorced. Communication is critical to keeping people connected with one another.
Right.
If you don't have communication, you have a divide, you have a split, and the next thing you know, you're divorced or you're in a civil war.
Yeah, I think it was Jefferson that said, I may be violently opposed to what you say, but I'll die for the right for you to say it.
Mm.
And, we need to have open debate, open discussion. Listen, you state your points. I'm not going to shut you up from stating your points. But the problem has gotten now to where it's like, you're just hate speech and all these words that are typical of 1984, George Orwell's 1984, where,
Yep.
Then you start to stop certain type speeches. Listen, everybody needs a voice. Everybody needs to be spoken. Some people are off their rocker. Some people are delusional, but they still need to have a voice, and we need to be able to rebut that. So that's definitely, it's one of the things that I watched with these protests across the country since Iran has sent those missiles to Israel, and there were people protesting Israel. Which, hey, you got to have a freedom of voice. You have a freedom, just do that. But they're blocking freeways, they're blocking highways, they're blocking bridges, and they're blocking commerce. And then law enforcement is just standing there watching. They're not trying to clear the bridge. They're not trying to get these people out of the way. And they're breaking the law. And a lot of people are getting angry, but there's not much they can do when the law enforcement's just standing there going, if you touch him now, you're in trouble. And they're just stuck on a bridge for however long these people decide they're going to sit there. And they are unreasonable. They won't listen. And it's just absolutely maddening. What's crazy, though, is it seems like that these people are doing all this crazy stuff and they're rioting and there's nothing happening to them. They're actually protected.
Yeah.
Then you turn around, if you're on the other side and you do any little thing, they're coming down on you like, a banshee. In a lot of the deep state, I don't, many of you have heard about the guy and he was doing wrong. I mean, from what I saw, and this is just from what I saw. This guy was buying guns, tons of guns, going to gun shows and selling them without any paperwork. And the reason he got caught was because a lot of people, they were found in crime scenes. Mm-hmm. These guns kept coming up in crime scenes because this guy just wasn't checking IDs. And he was actually like he was in charge of in Little Rock, Arkansas. He was over the aviation. Manager. Yeah. I mean, he was a pretty sharp guy. Well, and there's a lot of speculation that, well, he wasn't really doing anything wrong. Regardless, the ATF goes and does a no-knock search warrant and busts his door down. This guy hadn't done anything violent, nothing violent. They knew who he was. They knew where he lived. They could have picked him up anywhere. They could have picked him up when he walked out the door for work. But they decided that at 6 o'clock in the morning, they're going to kick the door down and they're going to take this guy at gunpoint, which he's a gun guy. And I would have been the same way. I would have drawn a gun because somebody kicks my door down. I don't know who that is. And he ends up dying. Was what he did worth murder? No. But so you got this going on. But then when you go to the other side of a lot of these protests and different things happening here, nothing happens.
Right.
Nothing. People, these cities that have this no cash bail, and the people are going in and the murder, rape, assault, and they're going in and they're walking right back out the door and they're committing crime after crime after crime. And yet, if you do something as a good law-abiding citizen, maybe it's some paperwork error, maybe it's some problem you have on your taxes, and you have a SWAT team come to your door and kick your door in. But if I want to go down to downtown Seattle and spray paint and bust out glass and run to a store and steal a bunch of stuff and run out, there's no consequence to that.
You don't even have to run.
Yeah. What the heck? I mean, what the heck? Now, I understand that some law enforcement agencies are disconnected, and that, the FBI can't help what LA's doing. But on the other hand, there's just a real problem with justice in our nation right now. And it needs to be solved, or it leads to the way I feel right now. that we're in an unjust system and we can't live that way. Now, that's not something I'm talking about doing, but I'm just saying. You know, I have a good friend of mine that was in the CIA, and he spent a lot of time in Africa. And he told me one time, he said, the American people won't rise up. He said, until it gets to the point that they can no longer live with the situation they're in. When they finally go, you know what, I just can't deal with this anymore. That's when they'll stand up. What really scares me, honestly, because we don't want a civil war. I can tell you right now, you do not want a civil war.
Yep.
It will, your family, I mean, dysentery, all the different things that come with just a wartime situation.
I think that's funny. The first thing you go to is poop.
Well, you know, that'll kill you.
Yeah.
And the thing is, that was the one thing in the Civil War, the first Civil War, killed 2/3 of the men. They died through dysentery and cholera and all these other things. It wasn't by shooting. So you got your family, and then you can't get medical attention because it's all affected in certain areas. I'm not saying that there's a time to stand up, because there is. Our founding fathers were very clear on that, and we need to be doing that, but you don't want it. You're not calling for it.
Yeah, that should be the very, very, very last.
That is
last
the last.
resort.
Yeah, but it is an option. Okay, hold on. Let's go to some questions if we have any, and if they. Well, we'll finish this out. So there's a lot of attacks on our freedom. There's attacks on, firearms, and you can see it right now. I mean, the ATF they just keep pushing different things, anything they can get, and it gets knocked down in court. It's been knocked down in court over and over and over, but it freaks everybody out because they keep doing it.
Well, the big thing right now that's being pushed is if you buy or sell a firearm, you either have to have an FFL or you have to go through an FFL to transfer that firearm. That's one of the big things that's being pushed in Washington right now.
Yeah, I think it's if you're doing so many to where you're in business.
Right.
The fact is it's more of a scare tactic than anything. They're not going around and checking. It's just that if some guns turn up and that's where they get you, is if they've been stolen. And the next thing you know, you got to knock on your door and they're saying, where'd this go? Yeah. Or a kick in the door. And of course, like freedom of speech, one that's huge, one that's the biggest probably, and one to me that may really set things off is your right to vote. There's a lot of questions whether you believe that the 2020 election was stolen or not. I mean, there's a lot of evidence out there, but whether you believe it or not. A lot of people have doubts. I have a lot of doubts. Why not clear this up?
Yep.
Instead of clearing it up, we're just going to go, oh, you're racist, or you're going against people. People don't have to have an ID. You're hindering their ability to vote. And then they keep these voting boxes open. They keep these mail-in ballots going. No ID. You've got all these aliens coming in that they're saying we're going to let you vote. They're not even citizens of the U.S. They're criminals, honestly. They came across the border illegally. What if we lose our right to vote? Because that's really what happens, guys. If they're stealing the election, you have lost your right to vote. This is no longer a republic.
I mean, that's really concerning. You look at California, for example. They're looking at allowing illegals the right to vote in that state now. And what do you do with that? Do you count those votes? Do you null and void all the votes in that state and say their votes don't count this election cycle, because we can't go in and sort the legals from the illegals? It's a big problem that we have right now in this country, and it's something that is going to have to be fixed before November. It's going to have to be addressed, and it's going to have to be fixed.
But see, I don't think they will, because they're hell bent on getting this through. And what they'll do is, that's like a lot of things that come out of our current administration. They're unconstitutional from the get-go, and everybody knows it, but they still push it. And then it gets put in court, and then it's got to go through all this stuff, and they tie it all up.
Right.
It's just like in the movie Star Wars, when they're up there, when Palpatine is getting ready to take over, and they're sitting there, and that's when Padme says, this is how, you see the Republic die, to roaring applause. And it's just confusion. I mean, the Senate's just all confused. And that's what we're seeing. It's just a lot of confusion, and it's just crazy. And that leads to people kind of being concerned. And then you think, are my rights still valid?
Yeah, I have to take your word on the Star Wars reference.
Yeah, I know
I've
you don't
got
want
nothing.
to. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, sis, do you have some questions that are going to be choppy?
Chris Matthews asked, hope everyone is well.
Hey, Chris.
How are y'all's thoughts on the microchip and lithium use growing? We just don't have the infrastructure to sustain.
Well, Taiwan is a big catalyst there. I mean, they're the ones that produce most of our microchips. And that's really the big reason why we're us and China are having some issues with Taiwan. I have my wife's uncle actually owns a company here that makes microchips, and it's funny. He said we make U.S. microchips. He goes he said these Asian nations that are making them, they flood the market, and he said sooner or later it drains down, and then we're able to sell our microchips. There are some companies here, but you're right. There's going to be a massive shortage. We saw that during COVID.
Yep.
Where a lot of vehicles just sat on the side of the road or sit in dealers' lots because they didn't have microchips to be able to work their keys and do different things. It affects us all. Lithium, definitely. I think there's some huge lithium deposits that have been discovered in South America recently, which could give us some relief. But yes, we have been very dependent on lithium and on microchips to the point that it could cause a massive problem. Go to war with a country that has any kind of control. If we went to war with China, that could really cripple us.
Yeah, especially on microchip production. We'd be going back to vehicles with points distributors in them.
Might not be a bad thing.
Right.
Stephen M. asked, considering a bug-out vehicle, what would be your thoughts on something like a military truck like the M35A2?
That would be a beast. That would definitely be a beast truck. One thing, and this is because I've looked at some of these different vehicles. I think they'd be cool as heck. The one thing you probably don't want to do is to draw too much attention to yourself in a grid down. It's one, and here's the other thing, and a truck like that actually would be probably a better option because you can put a lot of stuff in there. And that's really the big thing with bug out vehicles is it's not just about getting out. It's also about having enough food, ammunition, just things to live. I did a video a while back about using your Jeep. I had my Jeep and I just kind of outfitted it for just really one person and really was very tight and really didn't have everything I needed. And having a destination is important. I think, though, that having a big vehicle like that, you could probably get through any barrier you could possibly.
There's definitely some benefits and drawbacks to a larger vehicle like that. The benefits are it is a large vehicle. You do have the ability to be able to push things out of your way. That one of the big negatives to it, though, is if you have to go in any type of off-road situation, because of the weight of that vehicle, it's very easy to get it stuck. And once you get a big vehicle like that stuck, it's very, very difficult to get it out. So if you're staying on paved roads, gravel roads, things like that, that have a good surface and foundation for you to drive on, I think it's going to be hard to beat. But if you're looking at something that's for on-road, off-road, rough terrain, especially soft terrain, rain, sand, things like that, it may not be the ideal vehicle because you could get stuck really bad with it.
But you'd look cool, even if you're stuck.
Even stuck.
One thing too is, and we've said this about like motorhomes. I mean, to me, having a big motorhome would be like the ideal bug out vehicle because not that it looks cool, but that you can really put a lot of stuff in there. But the big problem is you are a massive target. People are going to know that you've got a lot of stuff in there, and in a real bug out situation, it's going to be probably better to be more on the down low. I think James Yeager said that when he bugs out, he would have a huge, covered trailer on the back, big, and have that thing packed to the gills and have his truck packed out. And because really, when you think about it, unless you have a location that you're going to get to that's not too far away, you want to take as many of your supplies as you can. I do not want to leave my food, my ammunition, my whatever. I don't want to leave that. And so, how am I going to get that? Now, having a bug out plan is vital because you could just be overrun to where you're just getting away with your life and it's not worth it to lose your life over your stuff in a sense. But yeah, I think that I agree with Robbie. It could get possibly stuck somewhere.
My Hurried Life asks, how can I be a prepper in an RV with my husband?
Well, you're already on the bug out.
Yep.
Well, I mean, you are limited in space, but a lot of times there's a lot of compartments, that are under the seats and in places. But usually those are places that you need just to sustain everyday kind of existence. But maybe if you're very creative, maybe putting cargo. Of course, I don't know. We've got a camper. I'm trying to think about maybe putting cargo bays on top, or do something to where you could carry some extra gear.
Yeah, the long-term food storage is going to be your most difficult part with that. Just not only because of the bulk, but the weight of all the extra food that you would need to carry for long-term sustainability. The ideal thing with an RV would be to use it as a bug out vehicle with enough food to get you by for a while, but get you to a location to where you could set up and start gardening and be able to grow your crops and stuff to be sustainable long term from there.
Yeah, I think, well, it is a bug out vehicle, so you want to bug out to a location, and so having locations, and if you're like a lot of people, they travel across the country, and so one thing about a vehicle like that is if you need fuel, and you're not able to get fuel because of vast movements of the population, so you could do it, but I would really look at that as going from point A to point B that's not a too long of a distance.
Christopher Reed mentions putting a toy hauler behind it.
Yeah, yeah, true enough. You could put something behind it to pull. Of course, that's going to add excess weight to your gas consumption. But I think really for me, if I was out on the road, I would be, and something were to go down, I would be making a beeline back to some kind of supply depot point that I have, and trying to work it out that way. Because I mean, honestly, you could pretty much go anywhere with an RV and or a motorhome or whatever, and set up and live well if you had food, access to food and water and things like that.
Dana Rogers asks, do you have any suggestions about, or even willing to make a video for understanding what to do were it by a nuclear bomb, step by step, in understanding fallout issues?
Yeah, we did touch on that a while back, and honestly, this is one thing I want you guys. In fact, if any of you need to do this, but it's something we need to probably update. Surviving a nuclear fallout is doable if you know a few things to do. It's not like it's just the end of the world. You can survive it if you take certain steps, get out from outside
the blast zone. Yep.
Yeah. Now, if you're in a blast zone,
Yep. The biggest thing is looking at where you live and looking at potential nuclear targets, and you want to be as far away from that nuclear target as you could possibly be, because if you're within the blast zone, you're basically going to be vaporized
or radiation poisoning.
Right.
That's not a good death.
So getting away from blast zones, setting up your house, your bug out location, whatever, away from blast zones is going to be important. Then you have to look at, the Gulf Stream, how the air moves across the country, the thermals move across the country. Where are you in a line with a potential nuclear site that you could get a lot of fallout because of the winds blowing stuff across the country? If you are, you're going to have to look at protecting yourself longer term until all of that radiation blows across. Different medicines that you can take for your thyroid to stop the absorption of radiation. There's a lot of things with it, but yes, it is survivable. As long as you're really outside of that main blast area and you do a few things, it is survivable.
The first thing I would do is buy potassium iodide It's pills that you take in case there's a nuclear blast or in the area. And what it does is you take it and it fills your thyroid. One of the things that happens for nuclear, for radiation, is it goes to your thyroid. So the potassium iodide, you can get it on Amazon, you can get it on eBay, you can get it wherever. We have a supply at the house. And two, if something were to happen, you see it. First off, you don't look at it. Secondly, you get indoors, and if you can get into a cement structure, a concrete structure, it's the best. But get somewhere that doesn't have any windows or anything, but you're going to have to stay there for a while. One of the things about radiation is fallout loses 80% of its radiation by the time it hits the ground, but the 20% will still kill you. And it dissipates fairly quickly over a few days. But we need to do another in-depth video and kind of go into that.
Yep.
But there is a lot of, even from civil defense type videos, talking about the simplicity of the things you need to do. Make sure you wash off whatever clothes you have on. If you're getting into fallout, you want to get rid of them. You want to put them in a plastic bag. You want to get them away from you. There are things like that, taking a shower. So there's some things that you can do and that are not huge, unless you're standing out in the middle of a field, cornfield, 100 miles away from anything. But there are a lot of things that you can do. So do some research. We'll look into getting something together. Okay. Let's, I hate to cut it short, but we're not even into the economy yet. So election year, we have talked about that. This is an election year, guys. I'm telling you, whether Biden gets it or whether Trump gets it, I want to mention this. If something happens to Trump, something terrible happens to Trump, whether you like Trump or not, if something really happens to Trump, he has a massive base. And that could be a real problem with the left. If you're going to take out a political leader of some sort for whatever reason, whether it's courts, whether it's especially because most people that are on his side believe that all this court stuff is just political harassment. It's trying to keep him from the presidency. And we're seeing something we've never seen in this country. And then January 6th, with all the different people that have been still in jail, haven't even been charged or being charged for things that are just whatever. Whether you agree with what happened or not, there's a lot of stuff that happened around there that I don't think anybody can agree to except federal prosecutors. But there's just some political persecution that's going on. And so to me, the election is vital. If Biden wins and the conservative right feels like that the election was stolen, we saw January 6th. We could have something much greater than that. And we've had 4 years now to make that a catalyst. So there is some potential either way. I think we're going to see some things. So just get yourself prepared. Make sure you're in a good spot.
Well, one of the things that I look at is with the independent third party that's running for president, kind of like the year that Ross Perot ran. But Ross Perot knew that he was not going to win the presidential election. But what the independent third party could do is steal enough votes from the right or from the left to tip the election one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So, I really feel like there's a lot of people that are looking at the third party. They don't like what we have. They don't like what we've had. They want something a little different in the middle that's a little less or a little more. So they end up voting for that third party independent instead of voting for either Trump or Biden. And I think that could really shift the election one way or the other with that third party vote this year.
If the votes aren't manipulated.
Correct.
But I agree. Kennedy, it's funny because a lot of things he says I like. And so it could appeal to certain people. Okay, we've got just a few minutes. The economy. Now, again, gold prices, that is a huge indicator. What I will say, and again, there's a video coming out about this, about how I do it. But I'm not saying that you take your 401k, cash it out and buy gold. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you're going to make a bunch of money by investing in gold, because gold fluctuates. It's a commodity, and it's really something that But the one thing it does do, it does protect your wealth. It's a hedge and it diversifies. But what I really love is not investing in gold certificates or some kind of gold mining operation or whatever. I like to have my gold and silver, my precious metals, in my hand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big deal. Yes, I invest in copper, brass, and steel, just like, but that's not the only thing I invest in. So I feel like that with silver, especially, I can take a silver dime that's pre-64 or 64 and below, and I can go somewhere and people say, okay, that's a silver dime. They know what it is. They know it has a value, and I can use that to barter, trade, and sell. And so, or if it's gold, same thing, and having a supply of precious metals to me is vital. And, I've been talking about this for a number of years. In fact, you can look at my videos. I think 12, 13, 14 years ago, I did a video about silver. I think silver at that point was about $12 an ounce.
Mm-hmm.
It may have been up to 17. I think it was 2000. It may have been around the, the 2008 collapse. That's when I started my channel, but right after that. And I had bought most of my silver at one point at $5 an ounce. That's what it was. Gold was $300 an ounce. $300 an ounce. It is again now $2,300 and whatever, $50 an ounce or something. I mean, it's fluctuating. It does it daily. And so, but that doesn't mean that I've made all this money. What that means is my dollar is worth less. That's what it means. So putting back, and I don't mean putting all your investments into that, but diversify some and protect your wealth. I think it is vital. If you don't know where to go, what to do, and friends of mine at Scottsdale Mint, trusted. I've known them for 12 years now, and Josh is a great guy. They're going to be busy. They're going to be very busy, but that would be a trusted source for you to check out. And if you're a Christian, they're Christian, so that makes it. In fact, they have the Lion of Judah on their mint, and they mint coins for over 20 countries. But I'm not meaning that as a commercial. I'm just saying those guys are very trusted. But world currency, this is another big one. And here's the thing, guys: the reason why gold is getting dried up right now or going up partially is because China, Russia,
Middle East,
Iran, Brazil. A number of countries are buying up gold to back their currency.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason they're doing that is because of the US dollar is the current world currency. Once we lose that status, I'm going to tell you what, guys, the dollar is going to be worth very little, very little. If these big countries are backing their economies with gold and silver, why would I not, as an individual, back my own currency with some gold and some silver? I mean, to me, it's very simple. Those countries are also buying guns and ammunition and everything else, but and that's for a different reason. So for me, gold, silver is a good reason to put all that back. But again, they're in Costco. Costco last quarter sold $100 million in gold.
Wow!
Last quarter. 2 weeks, past 2 weeks, $200 million in the past 2 weeks at Costco. That tells you what people are thinking, which also kind of goes back to Civil War thoughts or possibly World War thoughts. Real estate market's a mess. I mean, rent for those who have to rent and have apartments or whatever, it's unbelievable the prices they're having to pay. I don't know how people even exist. I mean, I don't know how you can have a regular job and be able to exist. It's double my house payment, and we have a big house. So it's like, what the heck?
Mm-hmm.
And oil prices, when oil prices go up, and then, of course, the hiring. People are having a hard time hiring. Okay, so let's do this. We've talked about some of the issues, and we did mention gold. We did mention gardening. If you're a prepper, if you're watching this, and if you're not a prepper and you're kind of thinking about it, we've got other videos about how to get prepared, how to do things, what you need to do. But here's the bottom line, guys. Most people on here are preppers, or at least interested in doing some things. Ratchet that up. Put more of a priority on your food. If you're thinking about a garden, it's getting now to where, you probably should have already started your garden, but you can start it at any time. You can have a fall garden. You can have a summer garden. You can have whatever. So don't let that stop you. There are plants and vegetables and everything else that'll grow beautifully all through the summer. So do that. Thank God in our area, we have about a month where we don't have a growing season,
Right.
but yet we could probably grow some
11 months out of the year.
Yeah,
realistically,
we're very fortunate. But find out your growing season. Some of you guys are just starting into your growing season if you're up north. Get into the soil. This weekend, I was digging in the soil because I was pulling out roots from this one area. And I was thinking, there's something about my hands in the soil. There's something about planting a seed and watching it grow and producing my own food supply that is just good for the soul.
There's something about self-reliance.
Exactly. And then, of course, your water supply. What do you have for a water supply? Get serious about it. Sometimes we overlook water. Water's more important than food as far as you can live 3 days without water. That's it. You can live 3 weeks without food. Now, you're going to have food, but food and water.
Two biggest things you have to have as a prepper.
Yeah. I mean, you have got to get focused on that. Now, in the meantime, you can run out to Costco and buy your gold and then go over to the canned food section and buy a big pile of the cans of beans and rice and different things, and that lasts for a long time and to build up your food storage. But you cannot have enough food to last you for 30 years. You're going to need to have some way to be able to produce some food. And with all the events that we're looking at, plus with the economy, I mean, it's cheaper. Go out, right. Build your garden, man. Food prices. When your neighbor goes, man, I spent $500 at the grocery store. You can say, well, I spent $50 because I grew my own vegetables. Okay. But your medical in a Civil War situation, or even in a bad economic downturn, having some medical supplies on hand, it's going to be vital, because one of the things, again, that happened during the original Civil War was that most soldiers died of dysentery, of some sort of dysentery or some sort of disease. And so that is the biggest killer. That's more important, which you kind of think, I don't want to think that as a gun guy, but that's actually more important than my guns. And I got to defend my stuff. But on the other hand, if I don't have medical supplies, if I don't have antibiotic ointment, if I don't have enough bandages, if somebody gets shot in our group, and we can't keep that clean, those sterile bandages, I highly recommend getting a ton of those things. Loading up with sterile bandages. They're cheap. You can load them up. You can pack them up.
And they don't go bad.
Yeah, they don't go bad. And you keep them in a good sterile environment and keep that clean. But you're going to have to take that bandage off, and then you have to reapply a bandage constantly if somebody's injured in some way. Having the tools you need to be able to be self-sufficient. The fact is you really should be working as slow as it takes to self-sufficiency, which is more or less homesteading. And you can do that on a smaller area. So just the big thing is, the big takeaway from this whole thing is not to get all freaked out, because there is nothing you can do about world events. There's nothing you can do about the Civil War possible. There's nothing you can do about the economy except what you can do. So do that. One of the things, and I've used this example before, but we were on a weekend trip with my wife's family, and me and my brother-in-law and my father-in-law are driving down the road, and they were talking about all the things that I totally agree with. Man, can you believe this happened? Can you believe that happened? Man, what about that? What about this? Man, and they just were going on. I was just sitting in the back listening. And I finally just went, what are you doing about it? And they looked at me like deer in headlights. And I told them, I said, guys, we can talk about all this all we want, but if we're not doing anything, do we really believe it, or do we just want to talk about it? You're a prepper. You're here. You're concerned about what's going on in the world. Take action. What you do today is going to put you ahead of where you were yesterday. So whatever little bit you can do, and it'll get you started. Is Civil War right next week? No, Lord, no. I mean, that would be a shocker. But, it builds up over time.
That's right. Yep.
So go ahead and get yourself in good shape. And it's just like right before COVID. We've been talking and talking and talking. And, people got in touch with me when COVID hit, and they said, "Thank you for encouraging us to prep." And I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm just saying, when events happen, you're going to be so glad you did. So glad. So we're going to sign off. We are over time. I hope that it wasn't too distracting with the audio. We're going to check out that and see what's going on. Really appreciate Robbie Wheaton for being here. Again, check out his live tonight.
Yep, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard. Discussion tonight is going to be truck guns. What's best for your vehicle? So that'll start at 6 p.m. Eastern on the Robbie Wheaton YouTube channel, and look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, and Robbie does a great job. I will be in karate tonight, and I'm not going to say unfortunately because I'm looking forward to it, but I will be in karate, so I will not be there. But Robbie does a great job. He and I have done some together, and it's just he just has a lot of knowledge, especially on the gun side. And also, and check out Wheaton Arms. They make Glock aftermarket parts, and he is the official supplier of dagger parts for Palmetto State Armory for their upgrades. And then also Sarah Mack, we really appreciate her for being over there and getting the few questions. And we apologize for that today, guys. We got kind of behind because of the audio. But we'll be back. We will not be back next week. We will be taking a break, but we'll be back the following week. So be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic.